All right, welcome episode 40 of the Been There, Done That podcast. Rachael Lynch, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
No, it's actually an honour. I guess you're a big name in the sport and lots of individual accolades as well as accomplishments in the team, the Hockeyrooos team as well. So I appreciate you coming on the podcast. First off, get us started or let everyone know, do a quick little spiel about who you are, where you come from.
Well, I've had to work on my spiel because it's changed recently. I guess I'll go with recently retired Hockeyroo.
Congratulations on your retirement as well.
Thank you. It's been a really big transition period in my life, actually, just post-Olympics, and changed my job and a few different things. So hockey has been a big part of my life the last 15 or so years internationally, but also a nurse, do some mental health stuff. That's me.
That's wild. So how did you get started? How old were you when you first picked up hockey stick?
I was 12 and slightly unusual, I guess, involvement initially. There was no one in my family that played, which is often the case. As in most people have a family member that got them into it, and probably why I started a bit later. But in grade 6, I had a sports teacher who was just super encouraging with all sports. So I tried out for the state team for soccer, for basketball, rugby and hockey. And I'd never played hockey before, but the school had some equipment. So I tried out as a goalie and a field player, and I got picked as a goalie, and that was it.
That's wild. Yeah. So you were straight into you had the pads on and everything. It was the first position you were in?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because, you know, we cop a bit of flack for being like weird and all of these things. And I'm like, I think I try very hard to change that reputation. And I think the fact that I didn't make the choice initially, you know, I sort of did. Obviously, I had a crack, but there was the coaches there picked me as the goalie, and it went from there. So maybe that's why it was not sort of circumstantial. It was like it was just a decision made then, and thankfully, because I definitely wouldn't have made it internationally as a field player, but you know, those are sort of those sliding door moments that can change your life.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah.
How it's crazy standing behind the nets and how fast the ball does come at you. Like, was it straight away? Did you feel like, what was the feeling like when you were standing in the goal, especially being so young and the balls come at you so fast? What's that feeling like?
Oh, I don't remember specifically. Yeah. It's always been something that I've loved, the unique elements of the position. I was always reasonably well coordinated and aggressive and able to throw myself around. I think playing other sports, I did a lot of softball and baseball, and so the kind of sliding influence was already there. I was a catcher as well and just had good hand-eye, so I was more than happy to fulfill the elements of goalkeeping. But, you know, I had a little period there where my coach in Melbourne used to call me Flinchy Lynchy. So it's not like you're immune to, you know, the ball coming out. It's not like you're just like this brave sort of freak of nature that can stand in front of a ball. It's not like that at all. I've had to learn that. But I guess all of the elements of the position is what attracted me to it, and probably why I've had success.
Damn. That's wild. It does because, well, like I said, you're standing behind the goals, even when there's a keeper in front of me and in the net. So you flinch. It's quite a speed. Do you know how fast that ball comes at you, especially up in the international?
Yeah, it can be like 100 plus. I know they do a lot of speed testing with the drag flickers and that. But it's amazing the equipment makes a big difference, because I'm the same when I'm coaching. You stand behind the net and you're not in control. You don't know if there's a hole or if the goalie's going to stop it. Yeah. Whereas once you put the gear on, and it's funny, I was saying the exact same thing to someone the other day, because I now work in a COVID clinic. So I'm doing COVID testing all day, and, you know, obviously we have people come through who are positive, and they were like, why on earth would you want to work here? And it's like, I feel so much safer at work than I do in a restaurant. Yeah. Because I can trust the equipment and I trust the protection. And it's the same in hockey. You know that you're safe as long as you're facing forward, whereas everyone else runs around in front of the same ball with no protection on. So it's you got to trust it.
How much improvement has there been in the equipment, especially for a goalkeeper? Has it improved since increased in terms of like the technology that's been put into like the pads?
Yeah, it has. You know, I've worn Obo my whole career, and they've got a bit of a patent on the foam that they use. It's developed a lot of the shapes, and from a protection point of view, it's always been pretty good, but we've had to adapt certain areas because of the way that we train and the amount of time we spend in our gear. The equipment does wear out much quicker than your average person, And like your feet, for example, as soon as the foam gets a bit soft, it really bloody hurts.
Yeah.
So you have to change it over a lot.
So it is foam, or is it like a special, like a?
It's a high density foam.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's this I do a bit of martial arts.
Yeah.
And they have the UFC, they design their gloves. It's just basic foam, and there's this I can't remember his name. He has come up with his own brand of gloves.
Okay.
Called Onyx, and they did this test. Well, like they had the UFC glove foam out, and they had his type of foam out, and then they dropped a marble ball like to resemble like impact on the foam, and it would bounce, so like it would rebound off the foam. Where his Onyx gloves, the marble would just dead stop, so the actual be absorbed into the foam.
Okay.
And what they were kind of getting around is that those like UFC gloves, fighters get a lot of like hand injury, like broken knuckles, broken hands, because the foam just like you don't absorb, like all the force goes into the hand instead of the actual glove. Whereas these ones, they're saying it's a bit more safer for the actual wearer because it's rebounding. I guess sort of similar.
Well, we need a bit of both because we want the rebound. So
right, to get away.
Yeah. So the rebound is really important to be able to clear the ball away. But they put, I know Obo put similar foam to what you're saying. I think they call it dead stop or something like that. Right. They put a layer of that in there. So that's the one that kind of absorbs, but the rest of the foam does the, I guess, repelling or the rebound because, like that's a key element too. But you don't want it to hurt, but you want it to come off as quick as possible.
Do you have to get conditioned? Like, do your shins get conditioned to the actual impact and all that sort of stuff as well?
Yeah, I'm sure there's, you wouldn't want to do an MRI on your feet or your legs because there'd be like bone bruising and stuff all the time. But different things, we're pretty lucky. When I first started, the kickers that we wore had like a really thick tongue. So they still do, like a shoe.
Yep.
But the way they were sort of flat packed, when you would put it on, it would just rub and it would rub your shin raw. Like I had like indents in my legs for a long time because you had to bend it. So I ended up having to like shove them under a couch for a couple of days just to bend them away. Yeah. So there's little things like that. They're kind of like little battle wounds, but they've improved that technology now. So it's all very safe, very comfortable, and it allows you to do your job.
I bet it's hot though. It must be sweaty.
It is warm. Yeah, Tokyo was a really good challenge because it was funny end to end. So 2010 was my first major tournament in India.
Yep.
And that was definitely one of the hottest tournaments I've been on.
Sure.
It was like 40 plus, and I was pretty new to the sport then, as in, I probably didn't have the same fitness level I do now. And then Tokyo to end my career there, and again, so hot. And it's not just the heat because you can acclimatize and you can learn to play in those conditions. It's the fact that you just sweat nonstop because you can't get air to your skin, and all the equipment means you're sweating and you just cannot keep up with your hydration. So it's more those sort of things you got to think about rather than just the fact that it's hot.
So being a goalkeeper and you're saying talk about your hydration, is the only opportunity you have is at the quarter time breaks? Is that the only time for you to?
It is normally, yeah. So that's sort of where I suppose I had a bit of a different approach for Tokyo, and I came up with the idea actually when I was kicked out of the team. So when I was training by myself, I had this idea, and I wore like a camel pack, the ones you go hiking.
Oh, yep.
So I had that under my gear, and I filled it with a slushy. So I had the tube come out the top, so it was fully hidden. It came out the little neck section, and that meant that during the game I could drink at any moment. So one, it was a way to keep up with my hydration, but it was doing the pre-cooling by having the slushy. And it actually worked a treat. It was a bit of a little hidden gem, I think. And it meant that when I finished the game, instead of losing like 4 kilos, I'd only lost maybe 2, which meant that you're not getting the same sort of detrimental effects, I suppose.
Is that legal? Is that allowed?
Yeah, what's hidden under the gear. So the only restrictions on your gear is it can't sort of extend beyond a certain size. And because it was on my back, you didn't know it was there. But I kept it pretty close to I kept it quiet because I was like, well, I felt like it was a game changer for me, and it really helped. Yeah,
especially because being goalkeeper, you have to be mentally alert, and when you start to dehydrate, you fatigue.
Correct.
You lose focus and concentration, and it's that split moment you do, and you there goes the ball back through the net. Yep,
exactly. And you want to be feeling the same sort of mental, I guess, alertness in the last minute as you are in the first. So yeah, it was a good little trick and a good little, I suppose, experiment too, because when you get in those climates, that's what really challenges you physically, and it doesn't matter how much fitness you do. Sometimes it's your nutrition and your hydration that can be the game changer for you.
100%. Who kind of floated that idea by you? Or did you just think of that yourself?
No, I just thought of it.
Wow.
I had one anyway because I'd had it since doing Kokoda many, many years ago. And I just knew we went to Tokyo a year out in the same month so that we could see what the heat was like. And I was over there by myself, and normally obviously you have two goalies, but I was there by myself. So I was like, I pushed myself to stay in the net as much as I could and just go to the extreme of what the conditions would allow. Right. And I just recorded everything. So I wore my heart rate monitor, and from looking back on it across a 2-hour training session, my heart rate was sitting where it would if I was doing like a reasonably steady state run. So I was sitting at about 80% for 2 hours, even though I was doing nothing. Like I was in a game, like I'm literally standing there. Obviously there's times where I was making saves, but majority of the time I was standing still. So it was just that physiological effect the heat was having on me, and that gave me all this information and this data that I could then use to make some decisions to try and, I guess, adapt to it and do what I need to do to try and avoid that response on my body.
That's crazy because you mentioned earlier that you mentioned like you weren't as fit when back in 2010 you weren't as fit. Being a goalkeeper, how much does obviously fitness is position based and that sort of stuff. So how much of a fitness base do you actually need to be a goalkeeper?
It's a good question, and you do need, if you're like a club level goalie, probably not that much. For us at the elite level, it's being able to back up training sessions. It's being able to make good decisions. It's playing well in the heat and all of those things. And I worked really closely with our physiologists and stuff after this tournament in Tokyo originally, because I was like, well, here's the data. I actually need to spend way more time on my fitness, knowing how important it will be in a tournament like that. And coincidentally, and they were supportive, and it's like, obviously it's no good me going out and going for runs. You need to make it quite specific fitness. But coincidentally, when I had some time away from the team, the majority of my training was my own cardio. So I was riding, I was doing different things. I was doing heat chamber sessions, knowing that fitness again was going to give me that edge. And luckily being, 15 years into my career, I knew that my technical and tactical ability was pretty good, and I could keep that ticking along. But having that fitness, I was like, I want to be the fittest goalie at the Olympics, knowing that might be the difference. And in looking back, I only let in 2 goals across the whole Olympics, and one of them shouldn't have been a goal anyway. But I think because I could concentrate, and we obviously defended well. It's not like I was peppered the whole time, but I trusted my body. I knew that I could stay mentally alert and give myself the best chance based on the preparation that I did. Right.
So when you were younger, did you have that same mentality around fitness? Like what was your fitness back, or what were you doing for your conditioning, I guess? When you were
when I started.
When you started.
Well, again, back then, so coming from Victoria, we had a minimum standard for all of our state teams. Okay. So we had to get minimum 10 on the beep test to even be considered for a state team. So
so you still had to run.
Yeah, so from under 16s onwards, you had to get this 10, and probably up until it was well beyond 20. I think till 2010 with the Aussie team, we did all the fitness testing and all the running that the field players did.
Right.
So yeah, I was pretty. I was fit, not their level, but I was definitely fit. And when I coach kids now, it's a question that comes up because goalies traditionally known as maybe the fat kid that can't run, or, the one that, and I think it's great that it's open to everyone. But if you want to do well at this level, I think you firstly do need to be fit from an injury prevention and all of those things. But if nothing else, there's something about doing a hard fitness session with your teammates. And I hate the times where you look at them just like absolutely, busting their bums, and then at the end high-fiving each other, and you're not included in that. So I really encourage young kids to do all the same training, within reason, but for that reason, just the camaraderie and the, I suppose all the endorphins and all of those things that come from those sessions.
Bonding,
that you just won't get if you're off the side doing your own little agility or skipping it all together.
Yeah, it's like a team struggle. Like I read this book, Tribes. I've mentioned it so many times on this podcast, so I'm sorry for everyone who listens. But it's the shared struggle that people have, all these tribes had with each other about actually surviving and being able to stay alive. It's the same thing with team sports. It's the shared struggle of, you're doing a hard session, or you might have gone through a period of bad form and the team lost a couple of games or whatever, and then you've somehow through hard work and perseverance, you've pulled it all together, and you create a closeness as a group that you can maybe you can share and go forward with.
Yeah, love that. And I'll have to read that book. I haven't heard of it.
I can't see it from you. Sebastian something or other's in there.
Okay.
It's really short. I actually got it done in 2 days. So if I got it done in 2 days, most people can get it done within a day.
Okay.
I reckon. So did you get picked up in the VIS?
Yes.
You get identified there. What year was that?
04.
04. Wow.
Or it might have been end of 03, but 04 was my first year VIS and in the senior state team. Wow. And then, yeah.
So how does it look for your career from that stage to when you got picked up or you got selected in the Hockeyroo? How long was that, and what was the kind of the struggle, or I guess the period of growth through that period?
So I had 2 years in the VIS and playing for Victoria, and I was fortunate to play under Rachael Lynch. So she was the goalie at the time, the Aussie goalie.
Oh wow!
She's also Victorian and my absolute idol. Like, I just adored her, and she was just such a legend. So I was very fortunate to play alongside her. The fallback from that was, I guess, well, unfortunately, it meant I didn't get much game time. So happy to do my apprenticeship and learn from her and just get time here and there. But it got to the point where, for me to get exposure to the national coaches, I needed to play. So my coach organised for me to play for Northern Territory. So I did that in 06 and went up there and I had a ball. It was so good. Like, we just got absolutely pumped every game. But the whole experience was great because these girls just, they had a lot of fun, but they knew expectation-wise they probably weren't going to win. And it's just those, like when you score one goal, I think we only got one for the whole tournament maybe. Just absolutely ecstatic, and we celebrated, and but I do remember after that, because getting peppered is a good thing for a goalie, and,
right.
and I got to I suppose show what I could do, and then after that, a few people kind of like, oh, you might get an opportunity. Team came out, and I wasn't on the list, and then it was a few months after that there was an injury to the Aussie goalie. And I got the call up from the national coach. So I wasn't in the Aussie team or anything, but I was obviously on their radar, and I got called up to debut. So it was I was really fortunate to have that sort of transition into the Aussie team. But, I guess I have my coach to sort of thank for making those decisions, because you don't know when you're younger. Like, unfortunately now I think I look at sort of young kids and it's like, if it doesn't happen straight away, they're like, oh, well, I need to go play for another club, or I'm not getting game time here, so I need to go over here. Whereas the value for I think me and I guess my generation coming through was you sat on the bench and you listened and you learned and you waited and you do all the right things, but you've got to spend that time, I guess, earning your spot.
Right.
Like it didn't happen straight away for me, and not many people does it happen straight away, but it's the same with, looking back at the amount of time that I did spend on the bench, even playing for Australia. I played 233 games, but I did the maths one day and there was well over 450 from when I debuted to when I finished.
Oh, wow.
So that meant I sat on the bench for nearly over another 200, either sat on the bench or didn't get picked. And it's not like, I had 4 or 5 years where I was injured or anything like that. That was literally just non-selection where I wasn't in the team. And that's the stuff that I think teaches you and builds the resilience and all of those things. But, I'd probably challenge nowadays, like how many kids would be willing to sit on the bench for 200 games without.
Yeah, I know that a lot of them don't, especially working in the waffle teams and then over in SA with the sample. We would have the similar discussions amongst coaches and even the older players. It's not the same as AFL. You get seeing our kids, you get drafted, first round and they can play that first year. And they still have that same mentality when they're playing in the waffle or the sample. Those younger kids who come up from Colts or under 18s, they think they can play league in their first 1 or 2 years. But those older guys were like, well, I didn't play consistently in the league side, like consistently, like round after round. I might have played 1 or 2 before that, but I wasn't playing consistently until I was like 25. And they don't understand it, or they don't see that as they want to play straight away. I'm just too eager. And if they want to see success straight away, it's one of those things that maybe in a pathway where they don't get mentored enough or they don't see it happening enough that they feel like it needs to happen straight away. A little breakdown or something down there happens.
It's hard when it's a shift in generation and sort of, I guess, expectations. But I think that because there's so much value in it, that at the time you don't see it. But when you look back, it's like, well, that's where your biggest growth is, and that's where the learning happens.
For you as a goalkeeper, how much confidence comes into play in terms of like performance?
Heaps.
Yeah.
It's a huge part of it. And that's why a part of me is so interested in it, like the psychology of the position. Because how do you coach or teach a 15-year-old kid that you lost 5-0, but it's not your fault?
Right.
So it's going through that process of understanding what's savable, what isn't, what's a good goal, what could you have done different. And I'm certainly at that level now where I'm very critical of my performance, and you could always do something better, but it's being able to just quickly move on from mistakes and things. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges, because as soon as you get a bit down, of course that leads to probably another error, maybe another goal. And then the flow on effect is so disastrous. And definitely missing out on the London Olympics, going through that experience helped me in my preparation for Rio, my first Olympics, which, took me 10 years. And part of it was the sort of like the paranoia and the lack of confidence I had in those Olympic years that I had to change in order to, build that belief in myself so that I didn't have the fluctuations in performance.
Right. So what changed in your mindset? Was it more of the fact that you just have to accept the fact that if you're getting peppered with, I don't know, for example, 10 shots, that one's going to go through eventually, or?
No, it was more, I think, the actual process that I went through in 2016 was around positive affirmations.
Okay.
And teaching myself to, not that I'd say I'm a pretty confident person, but in those Olympic years, it was just this fear of it's going to happen again. Because in between the Olympic years, I had real success, Com Games, number one keeper, gold medals, different things like that. But then when London happened, that whole year, I was just like so anxious about, I only got 3 games in that year, and I knew that I had to play well to then get the next game, to then get the next tournament sort of thing. And it didn't happen. So it was just this fear of like, if I stuff up here, this will happen. And then, you're looking at the other goalie going, well, that was a good save. And then the coach will say something to them and you're like, what's it all mean? Whereas my process was always back to me. Just what am I doing? What am I working on? And not being distracted by all the other stuff, because nothing in your ability changes. It's just your mindset around what it all means that then causes you to play poorly. So having, I'll look back on London and go, well, the reason I got selected in 2016 was because I missed out of London, and it made me or forced me to do things different around my, I guess, mental state and my belief.
Yeah, it's so hard to, I guess, reflect, think back on it, and then be like, it's your inability you can't really see what's happening, and you're doing it like it doesn't flow. Like you it's so hard to put it into words, because you get confused or something, or you might get confused mentally, but it doesn't actually affect your ability to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so hard to explain, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
Because I get almost a similar feeling when you do sparring. You might have a few hard rounds with someone and they keep getting shots and you can't get one on them, but someone else can roll in.
Yeah.
And then you'll be able to pepper them with jabs, and they could almost take something gets taken away from your ability. It's like in a mindset way. You lose confidence, and that reduces your performance almost a little bit.
Yeah, well, I've never done it before, but I imagine it's similar around like the clock's ticking in a team sport, and you need to score.
Yeah.
And it's just like having that belief that it's like, we will get an opportunity. Like we know we will, and we've always had that with Australia, and especially in hockey. You will get an opportunity. So it's like that patience, and maybe in the sparring, it's like doing all the right things, knowing that an opportunity will open up, and you've got to be ready for that, rather than just being like,
Yeah, maybe it's like you force it too much. You're trying to make something happen when
it's not
doesn't
there.
know ready. Yeah, it's not ready, and that's what opens me up a little bit more.
Yeah, well, I mean, as I said, I've never done, so I don't understand.
Yeah. What you're saying is spot on.
Yeah, so it's just that sort of being patient, and as soon as you force it in any sport, when you try and force it, it's not natural, and then that changes technique, and so maybe that's sort of part of it.
Yeah. Also, as well, with being a goalkeeper, there's a lot of communication, and you're almost setting up the defense, right? So how does that all kind of work its way into, like, in your career? Did you have to work on that a lot? Were you kind of shy at the start, and then you had to kind of you built into that kind of, because it's like a leadership role kind of on field?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's funny. Like, I think about this often. I suppose for everyone, when you think about your childhood, like, do you actually remember, or do you just go off what people have told you?
Right.
So I don't remember. But the communication was always a really key element. And I was really lucky. I had a good goalie coach from a young age when I joined the VIS, Michelle Flouch. She was incredible. And I guess I learnt from the best right at the start. So I had this foundation of really good basics, and I learned how to train. I learned to love the boring stuff, and definitely communication was something that she helped me with. But it's a real challenge for all goalies, because people come into the sport, and so, as I was saying earlier, sometimes it's the shy kid that's in there or whatever, and that's such a key element. And I suppose I have learned to use it as a weapon, where the better my communication is, the less work I need to do. So if I can organise my defence well enough, then I won't need to make as many touches, or when I do make the saves, they'll be in, harder positions for the shot or whatever. And I think it's definitely underrated from a coaching and a selection point of view, because I guess if you just look at it from a really plain point of view, you go, oh, well, the goalie's not doing much. But in fact, maybe it's what they're doing through their communication that is the real skill. And Ash Wells, who I played with for many years, she was also Victorian. Her and I used to chat about it a lot. It was really frustrating, because you'd watch a game and you could even just look at it and go, well, we get less touches. And it's like, well, why? And it's because we're both, really strong communicators. We have really good connection with our defenders.
Yeah.
We understand each other. They know what we're going to do. We know what they're going to do. And you put a lot of time and effort into that. That's off-field work and all of that, so that the ball doesn't get to you. But from the outside, it's just like, oh, well, maybe you only had 5 touches and 1 was a goal, so that doesn't look as good as 10 or 15 touches. So I try and teach, but it's a really hard thing to teach.
100%.
Yeah, but it's such an important part.
One of the things I love to do, especially I like to watch football, or especially in hockey, is being able to watch a bird's eye view from behind the goals, because you actually can see all the last line of defence in AFL, like the fullback or whoever is in that last line, or even a goalkeeper. You can see the point. You can kind of see, you don't actually hear the communication on the TV or whatever, but you can kind of see how way you're moving, and then the defence moves along with you as well, which is one of the wild things to see, because it was underappreciated, I should say, because you always watch on TV as a spectator view, as a side-on view. You don't really get to see the full screen and from behind the goals, and you can see how it all works and how it all moves as a unit, as a defensive team. Yeah,
well, Tokyo was an interesting one. I don't know what you could see on or hear on TV, but the fact there was no crowds, that changed things too, because normally leading into an Olympics, we're talking about the non-verbal communication and checking and all of that, because, once you get into a packed stadium, you can't hear each other. And for us in hockey, it's only really your World Cup, Com Games, Olympics that happens. Most of the time we can hear each other. Whereas this time it wasn't an issue, and it's so valuable to have that full awareness of being able to hear each other on the pitch. And so we're pretty spoiled with that this time.
Did it work the other way? Did the oppositions or the other all your opponents, could they clue in and hear easier what you're saying? And
the English speaking ones,
a
lot of them,
of course.
A lot of them aren't. Look, you can't give too much away, as in, even if they could fully hear everything, it's not like the things that have any sort of tactical significance, we don't yell out. Like variations we're going to do and stuff. But it's definitely the benefit outweighs sort of any kind of the fact that the other team can hear it.
It's interesting. The UFC, obviously they had no crowds there for a while, and a few of the commentators are actually ex-fighters, and sometimes the really good ones would actually say during a fight, oh, he needs to do this better to be able to, counter strike or do whatever. And one of the fighters heard him, took the advice, and knocked the other guy out. It was wild. And then after the post-fight interview, he said, oh, so-and-so heard his advice in the thing. And then they were cautioning him, have to be quiet. But obviously it's the same thing in fighting. You have different speaking. You have not English and then non-English fighters. And sometimes there'll be like different codes for different strikes and that sort of stuff. So definitely interesting. What the UFC's done now, they used to do, they have UFC fight nights. So 3 weeks out of the month, they would have fight nights and then one big card every month. That would be the pay-per-view. But what they've done now through the whole COVID thing is they've done it all in-house. So they have like a UFC performance center. Have you heard of that?
No.
It's like almost similar to like a waist sort of setup for the UFC. So they can host all their fighters in Las Vegas. So they'll say, put them all in-house. So they have a little cage, but only have like 50 people kind of buy tickets and show up. So that would be there 3 weeks out of the month, and then they have their one big pay-per-view fight where they'll host. They'll go to Vegas or they'll go somewhere, Madison Square Garden or something, so they get all their money. So that way they can made it cheaper for them to host an event in-house. It's kind of interesting. That was their first kind of, I think they were the first sport back after the whole pandemic.
Really?
They were the ones, it was Mother's Day. They broke up over February, March, April, Mother's Day, April? Start of May is Mother's Day.
Well, it's adapt or die, isn't it?
That's the one.
I think all the sports that have evolved like that, the ones that have money, like obviously it's been a much smoother ride, but yeah, you've got to adapt because otherwise, what do you do?
Do you know what else they did? They did they had UFC Fight Island. Did you hear about this?
No.
Wow, they did. In Abu Dhabi, there was like a whole section of similar to what they did in Tokyo, like a bubbled off area in Abu Dhabi. So they had fighters fly in, about a week beforehand, obviously get them all. Oh, no, they flew them all into America first, tested them in there, then flew them from America to Abu Dhabi, and then obviously tested them along on the way. But it was all sectioned off, bubbled off area, but then they'll fight them off on this fight island. So they could it's all sectioned off, and obviously Abu Dhabi have all the money in the world. They can host this sort of stuff and put all the infrastructure up, and
sounds like reality TV. Was it
very similar? That was one of the ones that Conor McGregor fought on that card, one of the big ones in early last year, and he came in his $11 million yacht, and
of course he did.
Well, he got too much money to know what to do with.
Yeah.
So what was your experience like? What was the feeling like missing out on London and then being able to make Rio in that 2016? It was Rio, right? So 2012, 2016, what was that kind of period? Obviously disappointment at the start. And what was a turning point to kind of get your mindset right and to get yourself in the mindset to I'm going to attack Rio 2016?
It followed a pretty similar trajectory because 2014 we won another gold medal at Com Games. I was the main goalie there.
Yep.
Number one goalie. Then we went to the World Cup and we came second. So we got silver, and that was huge for us. And so I knew I was on a pretty solid path. I think that year I got goalie of the tournament at the World Cup and a few different things. But it didn't really change anything. I knew I had to do a couple of things different. So the two things that I did for 2016, the first one was in the Olympic year, normally we're not allowed to work or study.
Okay.
So normally in other years we can, if you can manage to fit it in around training.
Awesome.
But Olympic year, we're essentially like on call. So, but in the two Olympic years, I guess I learned that didn't really work for me. My nursing was pretty important, and I guess having that perspective. So at the start of 2016, I sat down with the coach and essentially like begged him to let me work. And all I was asking for was 1 day a week. That's all I wanted, but managed to agree on that. And it's not just as simple as working. It's because obviously you need to have a day where you can, like I didn't want to miss training for it. So it was sort of negotiating that we'd have this day that was a bit, free from activities or half day given it was shift work. So that was a really key part because I think having that time away from hockey where I'm just not thinking about hockey 24/7 because it just honestly didn't work for me. So that perspective helped. And then the affirmations that I mentioned weirdly came about through a sponsor of mine. So I had a sponsorship with an organic chicken farmer and I used to go to supermarkets every Saturday and pick up some chicken. And I know it sounds a bit weird, but most companies won't give out money. But I learned that companies are more than willing to share produce. And for them, like what's a kilo of chicken? Whereas for me, it was like, that's huge. And I had a dairy and a beef sponsor as well.
Oh, wow.
But anyway, this chicken farmer, I went to pick up the chicken one day and he's like, oh, how many days? And I was like, till what? And he said, till Rio. I was like, oh, I don't know. And he's like, nah. He's like, you need to know this information. You need to be already there. Anyway, from that, we ended up going for a coffee because it's like, this is weird. This is the chicken farmer. Went for coffee and turned out he did sort of like a bit of life coaching stuff.
Yeah, right.
We sat down for a couple of hours and he just talked to me around, I suppose, neural pathways and different things, how the brain works and how it can't tell the difference between, what's real and what's not and what you're telling it kind of thing. So he helped me write out these affirmations and I can't remember exactly how long I got, but let's say in the 8 to 10 months leading up to the Olympics, I had this little piece of paper. I didn't show, I think my boyfriend at the time was the only one that saw it because if you read it, it sounded like pretty arrogant and things that I wouldn't say out loud. I'm, trying to be really humble and all that. But this was about training my brain to believe these things. And it was all the areas about my leadership, about my fitness, my performance and stuff. So I read it every single morning and every single night. As soon as I woke up, last thing at night before I went to sleep. And obviously each day at training, there was parts of it that I was having to really practice, as in, it was like I said, back to me and my race, my reality, all of this sort of stuff. And it was huge. And I think that allowed me to have a really consistent year. I played well throughout the year. I was pretty level-headed mentally. There was obviously times where I had that sort of fear of it happening again, but it wasn't a kind of paranoia like it had been in the other years. And I remember the day that the team came out. I think it was actually my birthday. We were allowed to go wherever we wanted. So that's sort of generally what happens with an Olympic team. You can be with family or friends, and it comes in an email. So you get to choose when you open it and whatever. I was in Warrandyte back in Melbourne, and opened the email, and my heart was going just a million miles an hour, because you just it's all you want. And refresh, because the email's always a few minutes late. And my name was on there, just the relief of all that sort of hard work. But again, looking back, having that experience and going to an Olympics a bit older, I think helped me too, because I didn't go there and just feel completely overwhelmed. I really got to soak up the experience, but I was really happy with how I played and felt sort of pretty steady. And all of those things, being older and a bit more experienced, just makes the whole Olympic campaign much easier, I think. Yeah,
be able to handle the pressure, and you can, bit older, a bit more perspective, be able to soak it all in a little bit more.
Yeah, and then the same sort of thing I guess people got this time with Tokyo, and why I said to many people afterwards, it was actually a blessing in disguise there was no crowds, because when you walked out there, it felt exactly the same as it did, here at Perth Hockey Stadium with no one around. So I felt like all of the younger athletes actually performed to their potential, because they didn't have this sort of gripping pressure and nerves and anxiety. Obviously stepping out onto a hockey pitch with no one versus 20,000 fans is going to make you feel different physiologically. And it's much harder to perform when you step out on the pitch and your heart rate's already at 180 beats, as opposed to walking out there and just feeling because you don't know that there's millions of people watching on TV once you get out there. So it's kind of the same. It achieved the same sort of thing for people.
Those positive affirmations that you had written down, I feel like is great. It's one of those things that it's almost like a centerpiece to your training, and it brings it back to what are those things that are most important about you and what you want to go, almost like goals are, essentially. Did you feel like you were writing those down, you said it sounded almost arrogant. Did you feel like you were kind of forcing yourself to be like that? Do you feel like, I don't know, because I don't know these specific examples, but do you feel like it was almost you had to lie to yourself to be like that? That makes sense?
No, I don't, because I did believe those things. And I understand what you're saying. It's like being like, oh, I'm the best in the world. It's like, well, are you? Probably not. So that it's got to be
realistic.
But also I was at the point where I knew I was good enough. I knew I was the best goalie. And in 2012, I probably wasn't. Well, clearly I wasn't, but I performed under my potential because of this mindset stuff. So I think it's having that. You've definitely got to be realistic. But for everyone, you can find those strengths. So maybe it's not across the board, the things that you believe about yourself, but it's fascinating to see, if I looked at my teammates of 27 athletes, there's probably 23, 24 that really struggle with confidence and belief. And you're like, how? They're the best in Australia, and some of them almost the best in the world, and they don't believe in themselves. And I think because throughout your career, you put a lot of emphasis on coaches and what they say to you, or parents or whatever. So naturally there's going to be times where they're like, yeah, you're the best. That was awesome. And you feel really good. And there's going to be other times where you're like, nah, not good enough. That was rubbish. So if you allow your belief in yourself to fluctuate based on other people, it's always going to be a roller coaster. So that's why the importance comes back to you and you having that belief in yourself. And that's the only way you can keep it level, because there'll always be selection. There's always going to be times where you're in, you're out, whatever. And of course, it's going to be up and down based on what other people are saying and what's on paper and what's actually happened. Whereas if you have that inner belief, you can oh, okay, I wasn't selected. Doesn't matter. I know I'm good at these things. I need to work on these things. Let's just carry on, rather than just being like, oh my God, world's ending. I've not been picked. Who am I? What am I going to do with myself?
Yeah.
So I think that's where the power of it is, because maybe it's a female sport thing in a team sport. You look at individual athletes that we would classify as cocky or arrogant. It's like, yeah, but that must be so much easier for them because they just always believe they're going to win. Whereas we have people that just always believe they're going to stuff up. And no wonder there's inconsistent performers in sport. So I think that's where, it's important to have that sort of inner belief in yourself and not be reliant on results, on parents, on coaches.
Yeah. So feedback is such a big thing, especially I deal with it as well with footy players and other athletes as well, being able to give feedback, but then have to construct the feedback that I'm
soften it.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm trying to soften it up just so they can bring it on board and take it, but not be so harsh that I'll make them cry or, hurt their feelings. But it's hard to address a way that they have to take action on it as well. It's not something that they need to sit there and sulk about, but you need to say it in a way that makes them take action on that feedback, whether it's good or bad. How does that work for you? What's the kind of an effective way that a coach has given it to you, like feedback, and have you taken that? What in a way that you've taken that feedback and taken action on it?
I think it comes down to the rapport you have with the coach. So as a coach on the flip side, it's getting to know your athletes. It's showing them that you care. It's showing them that you do believe in them. So even though I've said about that, having that belief in yourself, the greatest gift a coach can give you is their belief. And that comes from selection, that comes from taking a chance, that comes from all of these different things. But I think of coaches, like my VIS coach in Melbourne, Stacey Australian, we're great friends, so that obviously helps. But over the years, having a good rapport and a trust, it won't matter what she says to me. I'm going to hear it and I'm going to take it on board. Whereas when you have that sort of like butting heads with particular coaches and all you get is that sort of critical feedback, it's kind of like, stuff you. I don't want to hear it, and why should I do that sort of for you or because you've told me to do it? So there's a lot in the relationships, and it's a big thing now. We talk about coaches having care for their athletes for many reasons, but this is one of them, because when, like your friends, you care about what they think and you're more likely to make a change if they tell you something because they're your friend and it's coming from a good place. Whereas we've all had coaches where you're just like, no, that's not coming from, you just want to shoot me down.
Yeah.
I think to conclude, you're more likely to have an athlete make a change if you have a better relationship.
Yeah. It's so difficult though, because you got other factors that influence how you act or react to one other. Like someone could have had a bad day, one person could have had a good day, and how it's not that you do it on purpose. I don't think if I've ever been grumpy with someone, I've done it on purpose. It's more so the fact that I've let other things influence the way I've approached the situation, if that makes sense. There's always those things that kind of get in the way. And it's more of a thing that for myself or for other people who react that way, it's more about just it's hard to say to someone, walk into the situation. Like he walks to the footy club, everything that's happened outside of it, it's it doesn't matter anymore because I'm walking to the club. I need to be like, whatever happened during that day, you need to forget about it. It's hard. It's like how you react towards emotion. You might, you just need to take a deep breath. You not react straight away. If someone gives you negative feedback, maybe you just need to take a step back. Okay, just reflect on it, and then maybe come back the next day once you've slept on it.
Yep. We on that as well, something we implemented with the Hockeyroo, and it was more around mental health. But just when you were speaking, it made me think of it. We implemented, like we call it our check-in. Right. So when you get to training, everyone will have a little chat, get ready, strapping, whatever. And then just before we go out onto the pitch for the session, we all get together, put our arms around each other, and it's your moment to check anything in. So it's just the players. So if it's something good, great, share that. Where we all live away from family and friends and support networks, so it's important to celebrate the little wins. But if there's something that's happened for you or that's going on for you in that moment, rough night, just found out someone, mum, dad, nan over East is unwell, break up with the boyfriend, had a car accident, whatever, you share it in that moment so that people are aware. And we often find that firstly just sharing it takes the load off, and then all of a sudden they perform better anyway. But like you were just saying, if, one of my defenders is just moping around the pitch, I'm just going to absolutely get up them because I need them to do their job. But if they've just checked something in at the start of training, I'm obviously going to support them through it. So having that sort of vulnerability around, I'm exhausted, I'm in a bit of a shit place, this just happened, then maybe people will deliver their messages to you a little bit different. But if you don't share that, how are you supposed to know? And let me just say, I'm a female, so we operate a little bit different. I would imagine in a footy club world or whatever, it might be a completely different scenario, because I'm also all for the tough love sometimes and just deliver a message because it's got to be timely, it's got to be direct. But that's something that we've found helps a little bit too, so that when people are feeling a little bit more emotional and a bit charged, then everyone else can adapt a little bit better to help accommodate that.
That's interesting. How did that come about? Was that something that just you had to come up with the team psych, just kind of brought it in, or was that something as a group?
No, it was myself and Ash Nelson. So we did a heap of stuff with Are You OK?
Yep.
And it was just a mental health initiative that we brought in. And I'm not sure if the girls still do it these days. I really hope so, because I see a lot of benefit in it. And it does take a bit of time because you're asking people to be vulnerable. But I think those sort of interactions can do a lot for the group. And I just think it's really important that people share that stuff, because if you don't share it, it's the same with anything mental health. If you don't share that you're struggling, how are people supposed to help you?
It's an interesting point as well, because obviously all you girls are from different parts of Australia. You get brought into this place as well. And it's good to kind of, see other people be vulnerable around each other. It makes you warm up to each other. Obviously you're close, you do stuff outside of that as well, but it's a good little place where it's just all you girls as a team, as players, to let the walls down a little bit and share something that you might not if someone else was around.
Yeah, well, it becomes your family. Right. It's like a lot of workplaces. You spend more time with your colleagues than you do with your own family. So you've got that's a big chunk of your day and a big chunk of your life that if you're fully closed off for that part of your day, it's pretty hard.
How was it for you coming over from East to here in WA? What was the kind of the biggest thing that you had to kind of adjust to? Was it the being away from your family?
I put on 4 kilos in my first year.
Oh, God.
Because I lived at home and, mum's great. She used to cook my food and dinner. I remember I've got it nailed from the drive home from the hockey centre in the city. It's about 35-ish minutes. And I used to ring mum when I left, and honestly, she was amazing. As soon as I got home, dinner was on the table. Amazing. Then you come over here. I moved out. I lived with another girl just in a random share house. I didn't know her. All of a sudden, you're going to prep all your own food. And just stuff like that. It's like hard.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to meet people too. Like I got a job. I had a graduate position in my nursing and stuff. So that definitely helped. But it's just building your own networks and just life skills. And again, I was a bit older when I moved. Super grateful for that. Whereas now sometimes we pull 17-year-olds out of their home environment, get them over here. What for? Like they're not emotionally ready. They're not mature enough. And it's hard enough as is to do the hockey in the high performance environment, let alone throwing in there no support or no family or close support, new environment, living out of home, all of this stuff. Like it needs a little bit more care and attention, I think.
It's one of the things that I think that Americans do pretty well with their college system, how they, especially with basketball, like a lot of them don't play NBA until they're 22 once they've got a degree under their belt, and they've had to live, well, most of them do, they live away from where they grew up in high school, so they've had to build up a network of friends and go to college. They have an education now, and usually when in that college system, they learn how to do certain things like cook or do whatever.
Life skills.
They learn some life skills. And when they do that, then they are better for it when they do go professional anyway, because they're a little bit older, they're a bit more mature with their body too. Obviously, the college system is great for their physical development. It's one of those things that's missing, especially hockey. A lot of young girls and guys play quite young, and the same with AFL as well. There are a lot of young footballers who start maybe a little bit too early.
Well, the family system helps, like a billeting scenario. So we've again tried to introduce that. A couple of the Vic girls, when they first moved over, stayed with a connection of mine, and that worked really well. Like they went straight into a family environment. So they just had that extra support. They had someone that could pick them up if they need a lift, or you'd get an extra meal every now and then because the family's already cooked. And so I think that helps. I know the AFL do that really well.
It's almost like you think the first 2 weeks are great. It's like a freedom.
Yeah.
And then once the reality hits that third week, you're like, oh, I've had takeaway for the last 14 days.
This is hard.
So what was the around the cooking? What was your kind of go-to once you kind of figured out? Was it easy little meal that you could make before training or after, depending if you had a late or early session?
Yeah, I don't remember. I remember eating a lot of yogurt and kind of nuts and stuff, just like really easy meals. But mum was great. Like I knew how to cook and I knew how to live at home, but nothing fancy. I'm very much now I'm like a meat and veggies and meat salad.
Easy.
Yeah, so it's just it's just trying to have good routines and systems.
That's the one.
Preparing, doing your shopping early so that you've got food, just stuff like that. But you don't learn this stuff until you get out of home. And
the Sunday afternoon or Sunday morning shop.
Yeah.
Do that.
Yeah, go to the markets. Yeah. Whatever you got to do.
Your markets? Where do you go?
Not so much these days. I do like a produce market, but I used to go to all of them for Subi and Clontarf, or the Manning market it is now, and then the one in Claremont to pick up my produce. Yeah. Whereas now it's just wherever.
That's wild. So Rio was the first one. Olympics. How did you rate that after you? So you finished off the Rio Olympics. Did you rate your performance? Was there feedback given to you from coaches and how you went? And how did you kind of receive that and go into the following year or the following tournaments after that?
It was a bit of a disaster. So we came sixth, I think. We got knocked out in the quarters, and then all of a sudden we're in Brazil in Rio with an extra week that we didn't bank on because we thought we'd be playing all the way through.
Shit.
So lots of stuff went down, which I won't go into, but essentially things around our coach and all this stuff that was just really nasty. And the girls we split off and we had time to spend with family, and the group was forced to go and watch the gold medal match, and people are just like, no, because it was like, this is a learning opportunity moving forward. And it's like, we're still grieving the fact that we just, blew it. So heaps happened there. And then we just had a full reshuffle in our staffing. Coach was sacked and all of these different things. So we never properly debriefed that Olympics, and it only came up a sort of a little while later that we hadn't done that, and it's really important. So that was something they tried to implement from other tournaments, because as soon as you finish, you obviously go back and you'll have a break and then you go back into training, whereas Olympics often for some, that's it. And some of our girls, it was the last game they ever played. So it's almost a bit of a shame how it works out that, we lost, but we didn't get to celebrate. Like for our captain, Madonna Blythe, that was her last game and we just all split off. And so it makes me pretty sad when you think about that. But it was just really heartbreaking. And then going into Tokyo, that's all we thought. We didn't want this to happen again. And it did. And, obviously often what you think about does eventuate, and very different circumstances. But Australia as a nation needs to get better at those crunch games, those quarterfinal games, because it doesn't matter, this time round, completely different. We won every single game leading into the quarterfinal and then lost that 1-0. Whereas in Rio, we'd already lost a couple of games, had a couple of crunch games. It was much closer, but it's just the Olympic format. So what do you do?
Yeah, it's difficult. Did you, Rio, was it, how much of a media impact to have on the feeling of the team? Like, I'm not sure if you knew the Opals in that 2016 Rio, they're obviously very successful basketball nation as well. The Opals, once they got kicked out, the media was so much backlash in the media. Had Nat Burton on, she kind of explained how they got berated in the media and social media and everything like that, and how much of an impact that had on her feeling on towards basketball itself. How much did that have a similar impact with the Hockeyroo at all, or was so much a bit more of what the coaches impacted the feeling towards?
Oh, it was definitely what was happening with the coaches. I think I remember from Rio that it was one team sport after another, and that's sort of where you're just like, oh no, like, gold medal hope is out. And then, we, even though we've not won a medal since 2000, people still see the Hockeyroo as gold medalists. So it was like we were out, and then, things happened with the boys and all of this. So it was a bit of a disaster. But that is one thing with hockey. We're quite lucky that we've never really
So it's a bit
cop.
quiet.
Yeah, we don't cop that because people don't have the same expectation, and our sport is just not in the media as much. So you do rarely get the negativity from the fans, which is something we're we're pretty lucky.
But you want people to watch, and it comes with the good and the bad though. You want
100%.
More people watching, and there's more eyes, more scrutiny comes on the back end.
Exactly.
You would have seen that the Hockey Australia had that new app that you can watch.
Yes, I
That's
did
really
see
cool.
that was released. Yeah.
I haven't looked much into it, so obviously you get full coverage.
Well, hopefully
Yeah.
this was the thing. The FIH did the same with international tournaments. They've got this new app, and you can watch everything. Great.
Yeah.
It's geo-blocked in Australia.
Oh.
Things have happened with KO as well. It's the same thing. Like it's never sort of simple in our sport. But yeah, that's what we're missing. We need to be on TV because that's where the money comes in. That's where the sponsors are. Hockey needs that. So it's great that they're trying to, make some changes.
Yeah. I always have this, especially with the Olympics and even other team sports, where all the television rights, all the TV stations make all the money, and it's the athletes that get left to pick up the pennies after. It should be the other way around.
Exactly.
Especially the Olympics is a big one because you watch it for the athletes. The athletes that draw the market in, and then it's the IOC who makes all the money, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, there's no sport. There's no money in our sports, but I think it's a blessing. It forces you to have another career and earn money elsewhere and have a different identity.
You mentioned that as well with your nursing, and it gives you wanted that day so you could work, and it gives you a bit more perspective on life. Did that make the training, not make it easier, but it kind of fulfills your life? Is that the feeling behind it?
For sure. And it's having that, other identity. So it's like, I'm not just defined by my hockey. So when things are going poorly with hockey, I've still got work. I've still got, mental health stuff. I've got other things. When you put all your eggs in the one basket with your sport, it's, again, really easy to have those fluctuations in your self-worth. So I think become a good person and do lots of different things, and your sport will just sort of take care of itself in a sense.
It's so wild because there's obviously so many stories about how athletes, they dedicate themselves to the sport so much and becomes who they are, and then something happens and then it just all goes off downhill. How is it something that needs to be kind of educated from a younger age? Like you do that with your coaching now, you try to educate younger kids to go off and have something like a hobby in the background or something.
100%. Yeah. And that's one of the things I'm probably most proud of when I look back at Rio. So I went through that experience with the coach of trying to convince him to let me work. And at the time we only had a couple of girls that were actually working, some studying, but not many. And then come Tokyo, we had, I think it was every single member of the team was either working or studying in the year, in the preparation for the Olympics. And I suppose your sporting tragics and the coaches along the way be like, nah, not good enough. You should be fully committed to the sport. I just utterly disagree. I think having that, and within reason, obviously, if you're full-time work and absolutely exhausted and missing trainings, that's not going to work. But finding that balance where you can have those other areas of your life makes a massive difference, and huge advocate for that. And I think it showed. I'm probably one of so many examples. Even when I retired, myself, Ash Wells, Eddie Bone, and Emily Smith, Emily Chalker, we all retired at the same time, and we literally just slid across into our other lives. So from a transition point of view, it's still hard, and you're going to miss it. But we already had jobs, we already had pretty successful careers, we had other identities, and you just move into that. And then you find other ways to satisfy the kind of competitive drive and the fitness and all of that. So makes a big difference. We don't walk away with a big paycheck or, we don't have super or anything like that. But you've got a career, you've got a degree, you've got a career, you've got experience, you've got something on your resume.
Did you ever feel at a time at all did you have your one foot in the door, one foot out the other?
With the sport?
With the sport, yeah.
Not at all.
No. Because because I guess it kind of happens a lot with footy and same with martial arts too, where it's towards the back end of someone's career, skill wise, you kind of falling behind all the younger kids coming up, and what happens that way, you start, most of them transition out into commentating and doing other media kind of stuff, and then you can tell that affects their performance because their talent goes down. The young kids coming up, but they almost say one foot in the door, one foot out the other. That didn't happen at all?
No, I always wondered.
Did you have to battle? Did you have to battle that thought at all when you first started? When you need to focus on career or focus on sport at the same time?
Like I've definitely gone on a journey with the balance. And when I first started, I was working full time because I was a graduate. And I remember falling, like I'd sit down with my educator at work at the hospital. And as soon as I sat down, like I literally couldn't stay awake. And it wasn't just the work, it was the combo of early morning hockey and work and stuff. So I went through that journey for sure. But I wonder if with some sports, like look at footy, that's their income. So their decision to stay on for another year is another full year's salary. So maybe that's when we do go a bit too long in our career. Whereas for us, it's like, well, if you're not performing, you won't get selected.
Right.
So it's pretty simple.
That's simple, yeah.
Yeah, you don't just get to kick on for another year and play rubbish because you won't get picked in anything. And yeah, some people do, but because we don't get paid, our agenda is, well, and for me after Tokyo, I was like, I feel I could play on, and I did want to. I felt like I was at the top of my game. Physically, I'm in really good shape and no injuries. So why wouldn't I? But I had other things like I'm 35, want to have kids at some point. There's young kids coming through that I need to allow opportunity. And so there's all those other influences. But I didn't sit there and go, where am I going to earn money? I must spend another year in the Hockeyroos.
Okay.
That didn't happen.
No. Well, that makes sense that way. Put it like that.
Well, because why wouldn't you? I mean, like, look at tennis players. You go to the Australian Open and you lose round one, even if you're however many time Grand Slam champion, that's still pretty good money. Yeah. Get like 100 grand just to lose. That'd be tempting. Why would you walk away from that?
No, it's right. Because then same thing, if they didn't have anything, where would they go?
If you got nothing else, whereas I can walk out and go, I can probably earn 5 times what I earn in hockey. Right. Doing other stuff. So it's like this scenario of, in a sense, the grass is actually greener, but, not taking anything away from the sport, and because I loved all of that. You don't get to travel the world competing, but the other areas of your life are pretty good too. It's pretty appealing.
Like you said, you played over 200 games. 200 caps, is that what they call it? 200 caps. What do you contribute to, I guess, playing that many games? Because also obviously not many people are able to play that many caps. What do you can put that down to?
Oh, I'd probably say like the way I looked after my body. Because, went my whole career never missing an international game through injury or illness. So I think, staying in shape, I learned through the VIS how to train and how to build my body up. Yeah, and there's obviously a bit of luck too and genetics. Some people just have, like, they're riddled with injuries and sometimes can't be helped. So I was pretty lucky with that. But I honestly believe that having that life balance. So I never felt like my life was on hold for me to play hockey. Like I was still achieving all the things. I was able to buy a house. I was still able to travel, have relationships, progress my career, do different things whilst playing. So it's not like I was always sort of waiting for that to end before I could start my life. As a female, the only thing is kids that make it really challenging that you have to consider.
Yeah. It's something so hard because obviously we're all male sports and there's not much. You don't have to worry about it too much. You
can still have 5 kids and still do what they do.
It's so difficult. Obviously, you don't have kids or anything like that, do you now?
I don't, but I've seen people try and come back. We had Jodie Kenny who had a kid and came back, and it's hard. There's sports that are financially able to support it, and hockey's a long way off with that because it's one thing to want to support it, but you need to have the money there to. Well, she can't just go away for 3 weeks and leave her child at home. Or, you can bring your husband. Well, who earns money then if the husband comes away too, when we're not getting paid to do the sport? So
yeah, that's very, very hard. Yeah. Because obviously Daisy Pearce, she was probably the biggest one. She had the year off and then came back the following year and still probably arguably in the best form. So it's not like you don't lose form or anything like that, but obviously hockey you don't get paid.
And sometimes you get better. Like I know for females, having kids can sometimes improve your fitness just with the change in hormones and things. Yeah. So it's pretty interesting.
Casey, when she first saying, well, she maybe watched it, or we watched a video together, and she was explaining like the early stages of pregnancy and all the hormone changes and whatever happens at the start. And it was like increased stroke volume and all these other things. I'm sitting there going, this just sounds like increased performance to me. She goes, all you ever think about, blah, blah, blah.
You should have been like, I need to get pregnant.
Oh, gosh. 2019, you were the FIH Hockey Goalkeeper of the Year. Was that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. what's the key thing that was different about that year that you got nominated for that? You got given that award. Was it you were able to play more games? You
I think it was
work on yourself more.
It was the third time I'd been nominated. I think. I don't know. It's weird. It's a weird system. It's a weird voting system. I think that was one of probably my top years, but there was probably two others.
Right.
And it's a weird vote. So that year the votes went my way. That's why it's hard. Like if you've got a bigger profile, you're more likely to win, and that's why often Belgium, Holland, those countries, because they have such a big hockey following, they get more votes. So it's simple as that.
So about your performance that year, was it just you able to save more goals?
It was a good year for me, and often it's been the years where I've played more.
Yeah.
We've had times where we've shared the net, and for whatever reason, the coaches choose to do that. But the years where I've played like major tournaments where I've been the only goalie, I've played my best hockey. And again, funny that when the coach believes in you and lets you do your thing, you perform better. Whereas they've just sort of always had this sort of thing around, we've got to share it and make it fair. Whereas we're one of the few countries in the world that does that. Every other goalie in the world, it's like, you're the best, you play every game.
Right.
But that's sort of, we just have a different mentality in Australia for some reason.
So that's how it works. So obviously there's 2 or 3. I think, was there 3 goalkeepers?
Generally there's 3.
Squad?
Yeah.
And then here in Australia, you try to share the load.
A little bit. Yeah. Because it's like, well, what if you get injured? It's like, I've not been injured in 233 games. Why would we plan for that?
Yeah. Because it's one of the, don't. So
it's bizarre. And soccer the same. You know, you don't have your Premier League goalies switching.
No. So you would switch in game?
Yeah, sometimes halves, quarters, all different.
Because that would throw everything out, like we spoke about the dynamics of how you set up and hearing a different voice, or as a defender, hearing a different voice behind you now. You might not see, like there's a bit of trust thing too between your defender and you, and then another defender and the other goalkeeper too. Yeah, trusting what they say and what they see.
We're really fortunate, Ashwells and I, who, as I said, played majority of our career together. Very similar styles. Yeah. Communication's very similar. So the girls didn't, notice too much when we swapped in and out. So that was fine. And it's just one of those things that we've had this mentality, and I don't agree with it, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Obviously, would you say that 2019 was like your best year? Like you felt fulfilled as a hockey player or hockey goalkeeper in that year? Was that?
Maybe. 2018 was a pretty good year. Yeah. 19 was good. I think 19 was the introduction of the Pro League from memory. So playing a lot more smaller. It's one big tournament, but playing in different countries, home and away season. That was pretty cool. But honestly, I can't remember what was different in that year. It might have been the first time again, from memory, we beat the Dutch. So we played them in Melbourne. We hadn't beat them in maybe like 10 years. And that was a key moment. And I'm pretty sure I only played half of that game, but I got player of the match. And knowing whenever we play the Dutch, you're going to get absolutely peppered. And if I know that if I don't play well, we won't win, because you have to be on fire as a defense and really sharp as an attacking group to be able to score, because you probably only get one chance. And I think it was 2019, but that was definitely one of the fond memories of a performance for me individually and as a team.
Does that fire you up knowing that you're going to come up against like a good side, Dutch, and you're going to get peppered and you can show off like how good you are? Yeah,
I love it. Yeah. But I've also gotten to that point by going through experiences where I've been totally embarrassed by 5-0, 4-1, some score lines that you just like come up in your nightmares. So it wasn't always like that. I certainly look forward to that challenge. But to tell you what, if you have an off day, they'll punish you.
Oh, for sure. If you start that thing, you go into a game, I want them to have as many shots at me as they can. And then after that's like, I really wish I didn't.
First one goes in, you're like, no, go away.
Gosh. So obviously 2018, 2019, like you said, very good years. And then that 2020, what was it? 2020 selection at the Hockeyroo selection was obviously very disappointing. You didn't get selected for that year.
Yep.
Talk us through that. So you felt very good, and then you get not repaid back the faith from the coaches in the selection. How did that make you feel, and kind of the feelings follow on from there?
Yeah, I mean, it became one of the sort of toughest years of my life, and at the time I was tracking well. I think nothing really changed. I'd recently been awarded goalie of the year and was in probably the best form of my career. Felt like I was doing some really good things within the group from a leadership point of view and all of that. And then to be not selected, it was just devastating and but super confusing as well. And then from the meetings, it turned out it was more based on character rather than my performance, and just completely unsubstantiated stuff, and hence the legal battle and the appeal, and that all working out in both mine and Georgie's favour in the end, and everything that flowed from there to have a huge inquiry and to lose so many staff members. It just sort of showed that we had some problems there, and just for me personally, I think having had my experience with Rio and around my self-belief, it allowed me to get through that, knowing that I believed not only in my ability, but in who I was as a person. And I was able to stand pretty strong and proud, knowing that I'd done absolutely nothing wrong. And, as much as the circumstance was horrific, I still knew that I was on the right track, and that I had the full, support of teammates and people from all over the world. And that was kind of the pleasing thing when it happened. People that had no idea what was going on within our program, who just knew based on one coaching clinic I'd done with them, or one interaction in a change room overseas against them, or whatever it was. They were like, "We know you as a person, so something's happened here." And to have everyone sort of just back me in there was really great. But as I said, it was my belief in myself that that's how I was able to go through and fight it like we did and come out the other side.
It's crazy how your non-selection was based on character, not on performance. It's something that's that's like almost your worst nightmare.
Yeah, well, it is.
Being a coach myself, sitting in selection and someone brings up a character and it's like, well, should be based on performance. And then I don't understand how someone like yourself, over sitting in front of me right now, and all the stuff you talk about leadership and helping your teammates, and how someone could see that as something that's negative, not want to base that on have you on the side because of that. I think that's quite disappointing.
Yeah, well, there was way more to it, and there was just a lot of challenges, and there's a reason that those people are not in the program anymore. But I guess it taught me that it's really important to stand up for the things that you believe in, and in sport sometimes we just get caught in these positions where you're unable to speak because of fear of selection and non-selection. And I've had it, in jobs where you being treated poorly, well, you just leave because you don't accept that sort of level of behaviour. Whereas in sport, you can't leave because that means retiring or finishing your career. You can't go and play for another country. We don't have that. And there is this sort of power dynamic around it because you're essentially trapped in that environment. You do have a choice to go, but if you want to play for Australia, you have to sort of fall in line a little bit. Without going into it, it's essentially just about, standing up for what you believe in. And that was important to me. And I'm really glad that I did.
It's so powerful as well, having the confidence in yourself to be able to stand up for what you believe in. Something that not many people can do, have that in a belief of themselves to be able to stand up for what's right.
Yeah, and I probably wouldn't have like many years ago. I think I've always had that sort of view and being willing to speak, but there's times where it's like, no, I want to be picked, so just sort of keep your mouth shut. It's again all part of the journey, and I want the Hockeyroost to be in a better place. Now that I've left, but so that there's young girls that can walk in and just be themselves, and that they can have a job and feel comfortable to talk to a coach about having that job, and have flexibility and be able to play and make heaps of mistakes, but still know that the coach is right there with them and that the team will support them, and all of these different things. Like, that's all I ever wanted with the group. And they're definitely on the right path now, which is great. But, we had to go through what we did to get there.
And obviously because it was so close to when the Tokyo Olympics was on too, obviously would have thrown a big spanner into preparations and how that all worked out. So when you got reinstated, I guess, lack of a better term, how does that kind of look? Do you go back in and did you assume the same kind of role in the team, like leader?
Well, by that point we were, I think, maybe like 6 weeks out from.
Oh, wow.
So the timing of it happened as such that I got an opportunity, and then I had 3 weeks, I think it was 3 weeks roughly with the group to get back in. And then when I got back in, we had 4 weeks roughly, 4 weeks of preparation together. So instead of a 12-month block, which you normally have, and given Tokyo would have been 2 years, I got 4 weeks with the team. So majority of the 6 months leading into Tokyo, I trained by myself. And then, when I came back into the group, it was a bit different because we had a new coach. And by that point, there wasn't too much. Like I'm sort of, like I tried to be influential in subtle ways. I guess that was always my method in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't the designated captain or anything like that. It's not about standing up the front and preaching to the group. It was like little conversations and supporting people and trying to help and encouraging and building connections and all of those things. So none of that changed. That's who I am and that's how I play and operate as a player. So the difference was when I got back in, the girls were great because I knew that, they'd supported me. It was just a couple of staff members that it was like, ugh, they were involved in getting me out and they're still in there. So definitely felt that little sort of insecurity a little bit there, but it didn't matter. I was there for the girls. I was there to help them and, for us to try and win a gold medal. And that's all I focused on.
Right. So you had 4 weeks to prepare. Was that in that stage? So those 4 weeks, was that when you went to Darwin? Was it 2 weeks up there? And then, so it was 2 weeks before that.
Yeah. So we had the Darwin, the first Darwin tour was trying to get picked.
Yep.
And then we had a tournament in New Zealand.
Yep.
And that was where playing for my life essentially.
Oh, wow.
And was very, very determined there. And, that worked because I just knew there. I was like, I just have to I have to leave them no doubt that I'm the one that will help us win a gold medal. And that was sort of my approach. And, I think I only let 1 goal in there and then we finished in shootouts and I saved every one of them. And it was just like, I just wanted to make it super clear that because every coach wants to win, right? And I just wanted to make it really clear that if you want to win, you need me in the goals. And I feel like I did that. And then once we as a team went up to Darwin, once the team was announced, that was sort of key prep time. And by then we're all in pretty focused kind of mode. But a lot of the work I'd done in the build-up got me into a really good place mentally and physically. I was working on my fitness because I knew what I needed to do. And even though I was going through a legal battle, I was like, well, I want to be in the best shape possible so that as soon as I get back into the team and we have to do fitness testing, I'm going to just kill it. And I was like, again, I don't want to get back in and them to be like, underdone or this or that. I was like, I just wanted to make sure they had nothing to sort of question. And that also helped me.
Yeah.
I had that belief because it's like, I'm the fittest I could possibly be. I've worked on myself mentally. I was seeing a psych really regularly to make sure that I was okay.
Mm-hmm.
I kept the connection with the girls because I knew that was important, and I kept touch with international hockey because, again, you just don't want to be fully removed from a program and then walk in and try and do an Olympics.
So what always interests me is discussion amongst a group going into the Olympics like that. What was the kind of communication? Was it we're going in here to win a gold medal? Or was it we're going to go in, we're going to do the best we can, knowing we didn't have kind of the best preparation, I guess from coaching changes and all that staff changes and that going in would disrupt things?
I remember early on our coach, so Trini, who was the new coach, she made a comment that the expectations on us were pretty low because by that point everyone just thought hockey was a shit show. Yeah. And she said that in a meeting and it sort of just made everyone just go, oh,
relax,
yeah, because it's kind of true. Like we'd just been through this huge ordeal and in the paper, like we've never been in the paper. And I'm pretty sure I remember being in the paper 10 days straight. Like my family kindly saved all the articles. And at the time I didn't want anything to do with any of it, but we got all of this exposure and people are just like, what is going on with the Hockeyroos? So when we got over there, I don't think anyone was being like, oh, well, these girls are going to dominate. And taking that pressure off, plus, adding in the fact there was no crowds. We had a new coach who just was really open and willing to let us be ourselves. And you saw what came of that. We won five out of 5 and the group just played really, really well. And it wasn't a fairy tale, but I think given what we had, we did really well.
Well, I love watching as much as I could get my eyes in front of the TV and with time difference and work or whatever. I loved watching it all because I too went in the low expectations and being able to see girls get up to 5 wins straight.
Mhm.
That in itself is an accomplishment. To get 5 wins, not very rarely. Like you said,
It's never been
Rio,
done,
you lost a
women hockey.
couple of pool games. So, and it's just unlucky how a tournament goes. You go into those quarterfinals and you lose, and whoop, see you later. There's no second chances.
No,
So
that's it.
it's not like you know AFL finals. You make, because obviously you finish top, and in top, and you got AFL finals. You finish top, you get a second chance. So
If only.
if only. So after that, obviously you were disappointed in the loss. How was there a debrief after that? Was there, like, obviously the lessons from the disappointment in Rio? You did debrief, and what was the kind of the communication around that?
Yeah, we did speak as a group, and again, it was a period where people could split off, but they made sure that they were a bit more careful with it, and we had opportunities. The biggest blessing I found was the 2 weeks quarantine that we had to do, because in those 2 weeks we were forced to debrief. We were forced to stay connected with the group. So again, normally you'd finish, you'd go home, like wherever you're from, you'd split off and go there. And even though you have these really great friendships in the group, you probably wouldn't speak to them. Whereas in quarantine, we were chatting all the time. It allowed you to work through the emotions and what you were feeling with your teammates. We had formalised stuff as well. We had lots going on that allowed us to properly come down from such a big high, or manage a low, if you like, of the loss. So I definitely think that helped, and there's something in that from a future learnings point of view. Obviously, no one's going to want to do 2 weeks quarantine after every major, but I think the way that was handled definitely helped in the process. And moving on now, the group would have done, I'm sure, a lot of work. I've not been in there, but I'm sure they would have, to make sure they extract every bit of learning out of that experience.
And obviously after that, there was a big period of downtime. When did you start thinking about retirement? Was that something that was like recent?
I was always on my mind.
Yep.
There was a few different things that happened probably later in 2021, and then it was always going to be a potential, because we knew from the start that Trini, our coach, wanted Paris to be the focus.
Yep.
And I knew I was never going to be able to commit to that. But I still wanted to play on. So I sort of went through spoke to the people that I care about, had different conversations, waited, allowed for some time to pass. Different things happened. Trini got appointed, all of these things that all allowed me to make an educated decision. And then, also seeing a couple of my teammates retire, and having other friends that have since moved on with their life, and seeing that it's like there's a pretty cool world out there outside of hockey, even though you really love it when you're in it. So it was probably the latter part of 2021, and no regrets. Like I'm really happy, and as I said, transitioned straight into my my other world of nursing, and at the time in the mining company, and it's just given me freedom to do other things, which I've also loved.
Well, I've been following you on Instagram. You like to ride the bike?
Yeah, I do.
How many Ks you covered this week?
Ooh, fair few. What are we? Friday. I'd be around over 100. I was trying to do 100 each weekend plus in between.
Nice.
But even, I've got a new job at Royal Perth, and I walk to work now.
Oh, yeah.
Just simple stuff like that, to be able to get up in the morning and walk to work. So nice. And I walk home, I walk past my nephew's daycare. So sometimes I can pick him up, and that stuff that with hockey, you're always racing from one thing to the next. And I also love that life, but now it's just really appreciating the half hour I get to just walk somewhere or do those things.
Did you ride the bike much when you were playing hockey, or was that now something you've wanted to do?
I've always ridden. It's just you have to be a bit more careful with the soreness. Like obviously coming off is an issue, but like right now my legs are very sore, and I wouldn't want to get to that situation if I knew I had training tonight or tomorrow.
At a game or whatever.
Yeah, but now soreness is like, oh well.
Like you mentioned just before, it's a pretty cool world out there. If you had 4 people to choose to have dinner with, any 4 people, dead or alive, who would you choose?
Oh, okay. Federer, I'd love to meet, because he's one of the most humble athletes going around, I reckon. Oprah, I love what she does. Oh, Chris Hadfield. He's the astronaut.
Never heard of him.
You should look him up. He's got a really good YouTube. He became famous because he started doing a photos from space, and then he's done all these little videos of how things like how you brush your teeth in space, how you sleep.
Oh, okay. I think might have seen a couple.
Yeah,
of those,
so he's got a really good book, An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth. Really good read. And I've heard him speak live, so I'd love to spend a meal with him. And then I'd probably invite my nephew, Zachy boy. He can come along too because he loves food as much as I do.
Nice. What would you have
for the meal?
Yeah, cuisine.
Barbecue probably.
Oh yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Pork ribs, snags.
My brother cooks a good tomahawk, so maybe he could host.
Starving. I got some bone marrow out ready to roast tonight for dinner.
Really? Yeah. Well, I've got a nice dinner waiting at home too, so I'm looking forward to that.
Lovely. Well, I won't keep you too much longer. Towards the end of the podcast, I have my Uncle Frank segment of the podcast. He's my number one listener, and he gave me a whole bunch of questions for you to choose.
Great.
Out of the hat. I'll shake him up. You answered the four people very quickly. I had Shania on 2 weeks ago, and her phone, we did it over Zoom, and her phone crashed. It took so long for her to pick someone. She was freaking out. All right, Uncle Frank. Rachel's going to pick a question.
Uncle Frank's question. Let's see. What is the best advice you have ever received? Easy. This one I've mentioned a few times since I've finished. People don't remember what you achieved. They remember how you made them feel. So it's kind of like a favourite quote I've received. So this is from my maiden coach in Melbourne, Stack. And from an advice point of view, it's like be kind to people. People remember the way that you impact their life. And that sort of guided me with, staying behind to sign autographs, to responding to everyone I can on messages and Instagram and stuff. Treating my teammates with respect and care. And I think it's been a nice leveler and something to think about amongst all the trying to win and be successful.
There's definitely something in that, being able to have a positive impact on someone else's life. It's like that, giving back to someone, and even if it's just a 1%, just smile and say something nice, or just be normal, like try not to let your emotions impact someone else's day.
Yeah, small things.
Yeah, those small things kind of lifts you up too, gives you a bit more energy.
Yeah, for sure.
So
agree.
I appreciate it a lot, Rachel. Thank you for coming on the podcast. I mean, it's been an honour.
Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you very much. And thank you everyone for listening to the podcast.